So this script is going to be all about my views on free will. This is going to be about whether or not I believe in free will or determinism. Which do I believe is true? Why do I believe the other one is false? Am I a hard supporter of free will, or am I a compatibilist, or am I 100% a determinist? Why do I believe the other side is false and this side is true? I'm going to even prove in an example as to why I believe the other side cannot be the case. So first, which do I believe in? The first question, which do you believe is true? Free will, hard determinism, compatibilism, libertarian free will. I found this image off of Google for the different types of kind of spectrums that you can fall into for which kind of category you fall under. So I let the kind of like pause for the person, the viewer, you to read which is which. But I fall into this category, hard determinism. Next, I'm going to answer why, which was the second question in the intro. But first, just like last time with my video on morality, I'm going to go ahead and define my terms. So, the first thing that I should show is that I have the most uncontroversial definition, which does not affirm one side or the other of the spectrum, and luckily, I only have two terms of which need defining, free will and determinism. I don't have to get into libertarian free will or compatibilism because I don't really care about those. We're just talking free will and determinism. Now, free will is the ability to act differently, and determinism is the inability to act differently. Notice how I do not define these terms as the ability to choose differently. The reason I did this was specific, is because I believe that most people are under a misconception. I believe that people are conditioned to believe that you have the free will of choosing. A very common saying is like you have the free will of choosing spaghetti or pizza for dinner today, which is a very common saying, but it conflates the two terms. So people have a delusion that says, I have the ability of choosing, therefore I have free will. That's false. Having the ability of choosing does not... I'm going to make myself big for this. Having the ability of choosing something does not prove or disprove either determinism or free will. You have the ability of choosing under like hard determinism and strict free will. All hard determinism is saying is that your choices, past, present, and future, cannot be changed. Now, acting differently... Oops. I'll make myself small again. To act differently, which is under both definitions, looks something like this. It's every action or choice that you have ever made. Is it possible for you to have behaved differently in any of those actions? Could you have gone and chose a different restaurant that day? Could you have said something differently to the pretty girl that one time? And so on with every single choice that you can possibly think of. So that means in order to prove free will or determinism to be true, you would have to demonstrate that you have had the ability to, in every moment in your life, past, present, future, to behave differently than the way that you did or the way that you are, if that makes sense. I think that's pretty straightforward, and a third grader can understand that. The uncontroversial definitions is what I go for. So this is going to be my deduction as to why I believe determinism to be true. And it comes in the form of a syllogism which has 3 premises, and I'm going to give in bite-sized chunks explaining myself as I go along. Explaining myself as I go along. Premise 1 is simply restating the definition of free will as I described it. The free will is the ability to act differently. If you agree with the definition that I said like 2 minutes ago, then you don't have a problem with premise 1. Premise 2 is you will only ever purposefully do something because either you want to or because you are forced to. Now first, purposefully is in parentheses. When you trip and fall, or when I drop a plate, or when I get into a car accident, I did not choose to do those things. It doesn't disprove either free will or determinism. Now you want and you are forced to. Let's break down the difference. When you want to, that means that you have made a choice which leads you to an action. There's nothing external to yourself which is forcing you to make said action. Oop, make myself a little bit smaller. There we go. Now, when you are forced to, that means that there is something external which made the decision for you. So to take the example of pressing a button, if you want to, then you have decided, you've gone through the decision-making process to press the button due to your own internal decision-making process. When you're forced to, then someone physically took your hand by force and made your hand press the button. The choice wasn't made by you, it was made by something external which caused you to act this way. Oops, I forgot to show. Yeah, there's a picture of a button. When you press the button, if you do it under your own choice, then it is you pressing the button. If you're forced to, someone else makes you press the button. Premise 3. Premise 3. You cannot change your wants in any given moment. Any given moment. What I mean by this is that you have a set of wants that are running you every single moment of every single day. I want to record this video. You want to watch it. I want to wear this beanie, and I want to pick up these glasses, and I want to show them to you, how cool I look in them, etc. You get the idea. Every choice that you've ever made was because of the wants that were influencing you at the time of the decision-making process, at the time that you were making a decision, which I'll get into in just a second. But as for now, your wants cause you to decide, which causes you to act. And your wants are all determined by your previous wants, which I'm about to get into. So, in conclusion, for this syllogism, you cannot change your wants in any given moment, therefore, they are determined by your previous wants, so free will cannot exist. What the fuck is everything that I just said? Okay. First, let's look at final note before I give my example as to why free will cannot be the case. All the information that I give in this slide was given to me by my buddy, who is a fellow buddy who also studied psychology. His name's down here in the politics Discord server. I was real quick, want a last bit of defining terms. This side is the things that is required in order to make the decision-making process, and on this side is the decision-making process itself, and I'll go through it quickly. So, first thing that's required to make the decision-making process is self-awareness. In other words, you are a conscious being. The will, the ability to choose. Intention, to have purpose behind said choices. Biases. Think of biases to mean just like what I said earlier, the wants which are running you in any given moment. Choosing, the mental process which picks the best possible option. And finally, action, just a behavior which has an intention to achieve an outcome. I listed those off pretty quickly. If you disagree with any of those definitions as I threw up there, this was an idea given to me by my buddy Mohajer, yes, that's correct. And we agreed on these definitions, and we agree that it is required to have all these things in order to decide things. So, now finally, to give a description of what the decision-making process looks like is a lot more simple. It's only 3 things. You're presented with a choice. I love this meme. But you're presented with a choice. You want one of said choices, and then you act on said choice. That makes sense? So, you are presented with a choice, you want a choice, and you make the choice. Simple as that. Now, in practice, let's do this right here. Alright, so I need to make myself big, because I'm going to present, this is why I believe that you cannot change your wants. This is why I believe determinism to be true. This is all great to yap about, so let's actually try an example. What I'm holding up a red marker and a blue marker. Pick one. You, the audience, pick one. Okay, so you're going to pick the blue marker? Cool. I knew that you were going to pick the blue marker because first of all, I manipulated you into doing so. What are you talking about, Bubba? How did you manipulate me into picking the blue marker? You just presented it to me 2 seconds ago. How could you possibly have manipulated me? Well, first of all, with this background, the background of the last 4 slides have been blue, and both the blue buttons that I showed you earlier, which were a simulation of somebody making a choice, the blue words that have been scattered all around this video, the free will being the title of this video, which just so happens to be bigger and bolder, and it was the first word that you saw when the video began. And there was a blue pen that I was spinning in the beginning of the video, and on top of that, I threw on this blue blanket over my shoulders for everyone to see. So I've been manipulating your decisions from the get-go. I bring that up for a very specific reason, which I get into in a second. But assuming that you really did choose the color blue, the blue pen, since I wasn't forcing you in that moment, I was manipulating you, but I wasn't forcing you. Keep that in mind. You had a set of wants which were causing your actions. And again, your wants cannot be changed in any given moment. In any moment or in any moment in the future, any moment in the past. And finally, they were determined by all of your previous wants. What caused you to choose blue? You chose blue because you wanted to watch this video, and you wanted to make a choice when I asked you to make a choice. Why did you click this video? Well, because you decided that you were bored and you wanted to watch YouTube, and so on. And yet, because you wanted a computer, because you wanted money, and so on and so on and so on. Yap, yap, yap. I really hope that a lot of people picked blue in that moment, because that'd be really awkward if you're watching this and you chose red. So a very common straw man that... A very common straw man, probably the most common resentment that people who believe in free will try to use against a person who believes in determinism, is that because our actions are just caused by the conditioning of our previous actions, that makes us no different than robots who are committing actions due to like a guided programming. So Bubba, there's nothing that separates us from robots then. To believe this, I have 2 things to say. First of all is that it's not fucking true. We are not robots. But even if I were to grant such a retarded premise, let's say that humans are just running on some type of genetic code similar to a robot, which is the genetic code within us is what is responsible for our decision making, then that would not disprove anything that I said so far. This is a statement that a free will person might make in order to gain some moral high ground, that a determinist believes that we're just walking robots, therefore everything he's saying is stupid and false. Just because a truth that I'm presenting may make you uncomfortable, that doesn't stop it from being fucking true. It's my least favorite thing that a person might do, is like, just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean it's not true. We are not robots. So this is why I did this earlier. Even when I was trying, at least, to manipulate your decision from earlier, every choice that you've ever made, which you were not forced into making, was made through your own decision-making process, which robots don't have. We are human beings with morality. We have thoughts and emotions. Even if a robot has a coded emotions and thoughts, which it's running off of, they are artificial. They are not organic. They don't have life. We have life. Though I believe that we are on a guided path which is impossible to change, that does not mean that we don't have the will or choice at all. It doesn't just get negated. What my syllogism in the very beginning of the video makes very clearly a distinction is between us and robots is that humans have wants, and when a robot commits an action, it doesn't have the want to commit said action. A robot doesn't exactly want to behave to have a reason to do what it is programmed to do. We, however, do have the want to commit all of our actions. A second point that a free will enthusiast might say is that if our wants are just determined, then we can't be held culpable for our actions. That's like the second biggest straw man that a free will debater will usually say against me in the middle of a debate. The idea that, well, because there was nothing that I possibly could have done in order to change my actions, then therefore, under a determinist worldview, I shouldn't be held accountable for murdering that man, officer. And which I do have something to say to that, and it's simple. Whoops. Just because our life is determined, it's a very simple one-sentence way to refute this point. Just because our life is determined, that does not mean that our actions are justified. I want to say that in bright neon. I look at the bright neon flashing lights. Whenever I say this in a debate, this is what I mean. Bright neon flashing lights. Just because a person's life is determined, that does not mean that their actions are justified. Trying to use determinism as some type of excuse for your actions is not how it works. I can't just say, go to an officer in court and say, "Officer, I was determined to do so. My wants made me do it." As a matter of fact, the want is what condemns a person to begin with. If I were to imagine I go to an officer and say, "Officer, I murdered that man because I wanted to." That's not how it works. I want to rob the store, which is morally When I say that I want to rob a store, that is a morally condemnable statement to make. I can condemn a person for making that statement. It's because they wanted to. If a man were to walk up to my mother and slap her in the face, I'm not going to sit there and immediately understand him, and just because he wanted to he was determined to do it, so therefore it's okay. I'm going to beat his ass because of the fact that he wanted to slap my mother. That's pretty much all I have to say. That's all I prepared, so I go a little bit off script. Another reason as to why I believe that free will is not the case is because I've never heard an argument for free will that did not invoke God. Like, usually Abrahamic faiths, which is like a large percentage of the world, usually just says, we have free will, we have the ability to choose and be held accountable for our actions because God said so. That's 90% of the arguments that I hear for free will. They always come from theists. So I implore a theist, whenever I debate someone who is a theist or believes in the Bible or God or Abraham or all that stuff, I would say, make an argument, a deductive argument, using free will. This is just one of many deductive arguments you can make for determinism, which don't invoke God. All they invoke is a little bit of deduction, a little bit of psychology, and a little bit of knowing the decision-making process of people. Oops, there we go. But anyway, that's the end of my slideshow, and that's all I have to say, so bye.